I grew up in a United Reformed church with my parents and my sister. Um, and when I was 14, I was made a member of the church. So that's like the URC version of being confirmed and becoming a member in the Methodist Church. And that day it was Pentecost Sunday, and in the morning I was made a member, and in the afternoon there was an ecumenical event called On Fire, as it happens. And as cheesy as it sounds, that is what happened that afternoon. I felt like I was on fire for God. And I heard God say to me, I want you to lead in my church. And I went, I'm 14. No. But at 17, school, I'm quite academic, so school was okay. I just got on with things and did my work experience at 15 in an engineering company. But at 17, they asked us to do another set of work experience. And by this point, I was really torn, church, engineering. Um, and I So I asked my then minister in the URC church, if I could do my work experience with her. She said yes. I didn't think about the dates at all. She arranged to pick me up on Monday morning for the first day, and off we went. And I think that's when I realised it was Holy Week. So I spent that whole Holy Week following a minister around, doing services every day, blah, blah, blah. She said to me on the Monday, she said, I think you should do the address on Sunday evening. So when I was 17, she let me preach, I suppose, for the first time at a joint group service. So it was 3 churches coming together for an Easter Sunday evening celebration. And I stood in the pulpit and I was like, oh, yeah, okay, but I'm 17. So I decided that I would go to university. I did an engineering degree, electronic engineering with German. So I did 3 years in the UK and a year in Germany. And then after that, looked for large organisation engineering scheme, graduate schemes. Got one and started working on an engineering career. In 2018, I'd been sent on a corporate leadership course for the organisation that I worked for. And I was sat in Abu Dhabi with 39 other sort of business leaders. And they were all talking about how they were going to be the next CEO of this or chief exec of that. And that voice came back, and it just said, it's God. It just said, what are you doing here? But I suppose one of the biggest challenges coming into circuit ministry for me was I'd done funerals before, and I'd actually done a wedding service before I started in circuit. But I'd never done a baptism, and I can't have children myself. So I was really worried about how I would manage that emotionally, and what it might do. So within my first month in circuit ministry, my superintendent who was the minister of the church before me, had booked in 4 baptisms for one Sunday. I don't think she'd done it on purpose. It was, just a happen of circumstances. So my first baptism was actually 4 children, 3 families in one service. And so I had to plan it in a kind of logical way, and that worked really well for me. I mean, I was exhausted at the end, as you'd imagine, but it enabled me to deal with that really early on. And since then, that church has a baptism every other month. So I've been able to work through that process. And it has been tough at times. It's always tough when somebody tells me they're pregnant. I find that difficult. But again, I think God has enabled me to finally deal with that for myself, in that I can I can see how baptism is absolutely a gift of God. It's a gift of God's grace, and I can separate that from my own feelings about having children myself, and the hurt and pain that comes with that. And so I've chosen to write my dissertation for my MA around childlessness in the Methodist Church and how we can deal with that better. The high has been the variety. So each and every day is different. We held the first same-sex marriage in church in town within my first year here, and I took that marriage. We linked immediately with the newly formed Pride community group, and we attended the first Ulverston Pride as the only church at the event, because we strongly believe in the Methodist Church principles of God loves and values everyone. God is asking us to support and love everybody. That's it. God love is the core of everything. So I think in spite of the challenges, God's really affirmed that in me with some of the people I've met, with some of the people I've worked with during this 2 years. And we've been, you know, the link we made with the Ulverston Pride community group last year has flown into this year, them organising a fundraising event at our church and splitting the proceeds with us 50-50, because they want the church to continue and we want them to continue. So that's been a really lovely that community relationship has built. And then we've also been able to work with a local special educational needs college and work with some of their students, doing some gardening work on our land and some hospitality stuff in one of our lunch groups. And, you know, to build, when I arrived at the church, it was clear to me that they wanted to be inclusive, but didn't have the links. So we've worked really hard to build the links over the period that I've been there. And we're seeing that grow and come to fruition with different activities happening, different people coming through the doors. And that's been wonderful. There's been challenges and hard times when I've had to just stop and talk to God and say, what do I do about this? What are you asking me to be? You know, who are you asking me to be? What do you want me to do? And every time in some form that affirmation has come, I'm a God of love. I value every individual. So, you know, keep doing that, Hayley.